Welcome to the Automation Deep Dive. Just to get to know a little bit more about myself, my name is Lisa. I am a customer experience specialist here at monday.com, and I live and breathe all things automations. I always like to introduce with a fun fact about myself, and my fun fact is that whenever I'm in a company team meeting, one of my least favorite pastimes is when someone asks me to tell a fun fact about myself. So I like to include that for any other like-minded individuals that may be joining on the webinar today. So for the agenda, let's just go ahead and jump into it. We are going to be talking about automations and the value that automations bring to your workflow. So with automations, when you guys are working with any platform, we always want to make sure that we're working with a tool that is doing the work for us, not that we have to do the work for the tool. And that's where automations come into play. So today I'm going to be talking about how you can streamline your workflow through a combination of automation recipes. So we want to be able to improve transparency, eliminate unnecessary clicks, align cross teams and departments, and ultimately increase productivity and impact. Here for my agenda at a very high level, you can see that we'll be talking about recipes as building blocks to fully automate a workflow. We're going to be going into some specific advanced recipes. We're going to show you at the end how you can manage your automations better. And I'm also going to give a sneak peek of our custom recipes that are on our roadmap. For any of those who stick with me through the end, you'll get to see that. Some features that we'll explore together, again, when we're automating workflows, we're looking at those cross-board recipes, time tracking, dependencies, and then also I'm going to go into some basic monday.com features such as the activity log, forms, and link to item, and then also that sneak peek with the custom recipes at the end. For just some housekeeping to get started, we will have a recording of the webinar that we will automatically send to everyone that attends within the next 48 to 72 hours. So as this is an advanced walkthrough with the automations, I will be talking about more advanced topics and moving through features a little bit more quickly with the impression that you guys already have an idea of what a lot of these features entail. So if you might be newer to the platform and really just excited to learn as much as possible, we will have that recording so you can go back to it at a later time. Along with that, please, if you have any questions, add it to our Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom and not into the chat. We already have over 1,000 participants, so anything you hear, you put in the chat will probably get lost. I have two amazing colleagues on with me. I have Eric and Bikal, and they will be answering your questions throughout the webinar today. And then at the end, we'll have around 15 to 20 minutes where I'm going to go over some questions live as well. Also, if at any point, because I see a couple people might have some issues with hearing me, if you can't hear or see me, see my screen, just let us know in the chat. As we are all working, or a lot of us are working from home, there might be some network issues, you can never control everything. So I do recommend if you're having any issues, always just log out of the Zoom and then rejoin, and that usually solves any sort of audio or visual issues that you may be experiencing. Okay, so now that we've gone over the boring housekeeping stuff, let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, a quick heads up. Can someone let me know if they can see my screen? Awesome. Oh my God, I'm seeing everyone raising their hand. Give me just 1 second here. Perfect. Okay. So in front of me, I have my creative request board. So for my use case today, I am going to say that I am the head of a creative team. And as a head of a creative team, through automations, I want to be able to disseminate out pertinent data on time. I want to be able to notify my internal stakeholders, seamlessly manage cross-department project work, and manage my deadlines, all while having a completely automated workflow. So I do just want to point out that even though for my workflow, I am using a creative industry, I want to let you know that regardless of your industry, you can elevate your productivity by using what I'm going to be discussing today. Now, for a quick board structure background, this will help give some insight into the automations that I am discussing. I'm just going to go over my board structure very quickly here. In front of me, I have a creative request board. Now, this is a high-level board where through the use of a monday.com form, we are pulling in and intaking client requests. On this board, whenever a new request comes in from a client being a monday.com form, it's going to go ahead and be added here to my new request group. And then as we go ahead and greenlight any one of these client creative requests, it will move accordingly through the groups on my particular board. Now, the next board I have here is my creative process board, and this is a low-level iteration board. And here is where those requests that get greenlighted are going to be added. And when they're added here, it's going to get worked on by my creative team, and we can see a breakout of where a particular creative request is in regards to its phase. And then lastly here, we have this recurring tasks overview board. And this is a great board that you can use if you have a project or a client in which the tasks recur on a specific time frame, so either weekly, monthly, and you want to be able to create dependencies. And we will touch upon these dependencies at the end. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into it. I do see in the chat that some people may be having connection issues, but once they exited and rejoined, it worked. So I recommend if you are having any connection issues, please do the same, as that should resolve it for you. Okay, so let's jump into this creative intake board. So for the structure of the webinar today, for each board, what I'll first do is show you the completely automated workflow process. And then from there, I'll actually go ahead and reverse engineer to show you how we got to this automated state. This way you can see what it looks like and then how we built it. So for my creative request board, like I said, we have a form. We'll pretend like this form is embedded on my creative website that I didn't have time to put together a website today. And I am a client and I'm filling out this monday.com form. Here for the form, we can see it's pulling in the creative request, who requested the information, what platform and content type we'll have, and the amount of time designated to it. Now, once I go ahead and submit this form, it's then going to go ahead and pull this information directly into my monday.com account. So we can see the item right here. So this was the information that was filled out via our form. Now, when this item got created, there was already 3 automated actions that happened on the back end that allows us to more seamlessly control our workflow. So first being, when a new creative request comes in, we need to make sure that the relevant stakeholders were notified. So this sent out a notification to all of our relevant stakeholders. The second being that we need the relevant lead assigned. So we can see here in my people column that my lead was assigned here. Next, we also want to make sure that the relevant status is assigned so we know where this particular creative request is in regards to its phase. So we can see here, it assigned the status of new. So we had a lead assigned, a new status, and also a notification that got sent out to let us know that a new item needs to be green lighted for us. Now, because our team was notified right away, they come in, they see the particular creative, and they go ahead and they decide to greenlight this Father's Day Facebook ad, because who does not want to support our fathers? And so they go ahead and they change this status now to active because they want the creative team to be on this Facebook ad. Now, once they go ahead and change the status to active, there are 2 more automated actions that are again occurring on the back end. The first was really evident. We can see that this particular item, so our creative, moved to the active request group on my board. So we're making sure that all of our requests are in line with their relevant phases And the second automated action that happened is we can see in this link to item column, a value was automatically added. Now, I am going to take one small step back. For those that may have not used the link to item field in the past, the link to item field allows you to very seamlessly connect items across different boards, and this is beneficial if you're working with, say, a high and low board structure or a parent-child board structure. Now, the reason that it went ahead and actually assigned a value here is that along with this status value moving my item to a particular group, it also created an item across my relevant board to make sure that my creative team can start working on it accordingly. So if we go to that low-level creative process board that I showed earlier, we can now see that here, this Father's Day Facebook ad is now reflecting on my low-level iteration board as well. So we've had a couple of different actions occur, and we only had one manual action that occurred, and that was a changing of a status. So let's go ahead and actually jump in now to our recipes to show you guys how I built out this automated workflow for our creative request intake board. Now, before I do so, I do want to align just on some basic terminology, just to make sure if you might be a little bit newer, you understand the word choicing that I am using throughout my webinar. So if we go ahead and we click here, this is our automation center, and you will see this icon on the top of every board that you work on. When we click into the automation center, you will be redirected to your board automations. And here is where you'll be able to see all of the automations that you've already or a team member has already created on this particular board. Now to the left, if we click on the Automation Center tab, it then redirects us to our automation store. And here you can see a list of over 100 automated recipes that we offer within monday.com. It's a lot, and I swear every day I go in, there are new ones added. So I love playing around in here to see what may be new from the last time I checked. Now, because there are a lot, we know that trying to locate one can be a little bit difficult, but we've made that easier for you with two searching features. One, you can always search up here. So if you're trying to find an automation that's going to notify, if you just type in notify, it will then bring up all the automations associated with that particular trigger. Now, also on the left-hand side, we have these different categories, and these just break up the different recipes that we offer based off the different triggers. Now, what I mean by trigger is a trigger is essentially anything that is going to cause your particular automation to run within your monday.com account. So if we're looking at this particular recipe, a status change is going to be the trigger that's going to cause the action, which is to notify someone. So you will see this across all of our recipes. There's always going to be a trigger that you're going to designate, and then there's going to be an action that results. And I will continue to use this terminology throughout the webinar today. But now that we've gone over that basic terminology, I'm going to go ahead and jump back in to my board automations. So with my board automations, I actually used two trigger types across all 7 recipes. And these two trigger types are item creation and status change. So as we saw earlier with the workflow, when my item was created, we saw that it 1, assigned the applicable lead, it 2, notified the applicable stakeholders, and 3, it went ahead and it set the status to the applicable value, which in this case is a new status. And then the other trigger I used was status changes. So in this case, we have 3 recipes here so that when the status changes to a particular value, it's going to move that item to the correct group, which is showing that the item is moving across the process in this particular workflow. And then the advanced webinar here, recipe here that I'll be going into more detail on is this crossboard recipe that I touched upon earlier. Now, I know some of you guys' initial thought who may work with automation recipes a lot may be going, Lisa, these are not very advanced recipes. These are just, you know, a straightforward, you change the status and it moves to a group. What am I missing? But that is actually the point of this particular webinar. It's to show you that when you combine a lot of these more basic recipes together, you can really build out a fully automated workflow. And you'll see that even more evidently on the next board that I'm going to be talking to you guys about. On this board, while we do have some basic ones, I am going to dive deeper into the crossboard recipe here and show you guys how you would build this out. So let's go to our automation center. And again, for sorting, I'm just going to type in the word board because I want a recipe that's going to allow me to create an item on another board. So I'm just searching for a key word. Here we can see a list of all of our crossboard recipes, but we're not going to pay attention to any of them except for this guy right here. So with any recipe, whenever you click in it, you're always going to see values that are underlined. And these are your conditions that you are able to specify for your particular workflow. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and specify that when a status changes to active, I wanted to create an item on my creative process board, and I want it to link using my link to item column. Now, this specific process that I just went through right now, this would be the same regardless of the recipe you're selecting. It's just as easy as plugging and playing. But for the crossboard recipe, which makes it a little bit more advanced, is unlike other recipes, you have this item condition here. And when you click on it, it brings up a mapping pop-up. So you don't see this when you're working with a lot of our other recipes within our automation center, but it may look intimidating, but it's really easy to set up. So all this does is it allows you to dynamically map fields from your source board, in this case, my high level intake board, into my lower level iteration board. And to do so, all I have to do is click into this plus sign and choose which fields I want to be then pushed into these columns that are on my board that the item will be created on. So for this case, I don't need the lead field to transfer over, but I do want the estimated time to pull through. And it's really as simple as that. You just click the plus sign and choose the column type that you want to dynamically map. Now, something I do want to point out here, because we get this question a lot, is what are these gray fields down at the bottom of the mapping section? Now, all these gray fields are just columns that are not yet supported in our cross-board automation. We don't fully support every column type. So for example, here, a due date column, you can't dynamically map into that particular column type. So it's just gonna be grayed out, letting you know that that's currently not an option. But that really is all that means. There's nothing wrong with how you set up your automation recipe. And then once I go ahead and click done, all I would need to do is then click add to board and I'm set. But in this case, I already have it, so I'm not going to apply it. We can see that it is this recipe right here. So now let's take that step back. So I remember when I showed you guys earlier, when we went ahead and set that status to active, now we can see why it went ahead and linked the item here, because it actually was our crossboard recipe. And here is the item on our creative process board. So I'm now going to move to the creative process workflow and discuss the automation setup here. Just to recap the prior board, really we just wanted to highlight that crossboard recipe and show how you can take a lot of very simple recipes and combine them to fully automate a process. Now for this creative process board structure, this is just a low-level iteration board where we can see we have designers that are working on a process, and then with our horizontal workflow, we then have leads who then need to work on the process, and these are all dependent on when our creative team completes their work. So what does this workflow look like fully automated? We'll start there again, and then we will take that step back to show you guys how we went ahead and built it out. So for this board, already when we went ahead and had the item created, we can see that the fields that we map, so the name of the item, the estimated time, the platform, and the content type, all pull through from our crossboard recipe. But we also see that we have two other field types that are now also complete, and this is through the use of our automations. So when this creative item got pushed to the board for our creative team to start working on it, we want to make sure the creative team knows that they have a new project they need to work on. So we had it set up so it automatically assigned the designing team to the item. And this also notified the design team that there is a new item they need to start working on. Along with that, for every creative that gets pushed to the design team, they always have 7 days to complete it. So with our automations, we also set it up so that the design due date was automatically set up from 7 days from today's date, which is the 17th, I believe. Lose track sometimes working from home. And so this way we've already had 2 automation actions run, and we haven't even touched this board yet. But say now I'm the creative team, I was made aware, and I'm gonna start working on this creative so that I keep on top of my deadline. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my phase 1, which is the design of the creative, and I'm gonna select that I'm working on it. Now, when I select that I'm working on it, what it's automatically gonna do is it's gonna trigger another automation on the back end, which is going to start our time tracking column. And I see it didn't start, so let me just do a quick refresh, and that should go ahead and push it through for me. Perfect, there we go. So when I went ahead and changed this to working on it, it started my time tracking column. And this is great because it allows me to see how much time as a lead was it estimated that this should be worked on versus how much time it actually took the creative team to work on it. But now say I'm working on it and I need to take a lunch break, I need to work on another project, or I'm just going home for the day. If I change the status to pause, and we might have the same issue, so I'll just do a quick refresh. Let's see. Oh, just give me a second. Having some technical difficulties. Okay, let's see if I can get this to work again. Sorry about this, guys. Sometimes when I'm sharing my screen via Zoom, it can cause there to be a little bit of delay, but that's okay. This was working earlier before I shared on Zoom, but I will just pause it here and set the expectation. Let's just take a look. Okay. Awesome. Oh no, that's okay. So I am having some technical difficulties. It looks to be a problem with my network connection, but either way, it did go ahead and stop. But what I wanted to show here is that when you're using this, you can also go ahead and use the same status column to pause the time tracking column. So when it goes ahead and they pause it, it will then pause it here as well. And this way you can really see the true resource allocation in regards to how much time versus the estimated time. Now, when I go ahead and I change this to done on my board, what we'll see is there's going to be an additional couple of automation actions that are going to occur as well. And that's because we have a dependent workflow. And what I mean by a dependent workflow is that the lead's due date and the approval phase is not going to be able to change until I go ahead and I change this to complete here. And I'm going to click with this. I'm going to stick with the refresh that I'm doing right now. My network connection is not the greatest. I apologize. I am working from home, but I did go ahead and do that refresh. And we can see once I did that, it went ahead. It assigned now my lead. It assigned the next phase of approvals to start working on it. And it assigned my approval date to June 20th. And this is because once we go ahead and we complete the design date, which it was completed today on the 17th, the lead is always going to have 3 days to go in and then approve it. So we can see it was approved here on June 20th. And my lead will also get a notification informing that now she needs to go in and approve this particular process. So we can see so far, we've only had 3 clicks to a status column, and in doing so, it has changed the time tracking column. It has assigned the next person in the chain of command. It has assigned the phase 2 approval status to starting to work on it, and it assigned my due date. Awesome. So now let me go ahead, and now my lead, she reviewed it, she's all good. She changes this to done. And then we'll go ahead and we'll be done with this particular workflow. Now, just like we did on the first board, I'm now going to take that step back and walk you guys through how I built out this automated structure on my creative process board. So I'm going to jump into my automation center, and very similar to what you saw on the prior board, I used the same 2 triggers actually, so I guess I'm not too creative. I used when an item is created and when a status is changed. And these 2 status triggers are going to go ahead and make all the changes that we saw automated on this particular board. So we can see here that when my item was created, it assigned my creative team, which also notified them that there is a new item they need to work on. It went ahead and it assigned my due date for that as well, because it always is 7 days from the date that the item is created. And then I have a list of a whole bunch of status changes, and these status changes is what put in place the change in regards to the time tracking. And also, when I was complete with phase 1, my dependent phase 2 in my horizontal process started as well. So the advanced recipes that we're looking at on this board is for the time tracking. And this is what I am going to go ahead and jump into right now. So if we go back to the automation center like we've done before, I'm going to search by the keyword of time tracking. And when I do so, it's going to bring up a list of all of my time tracking recipes. But the one I want to specifically focus on is this one right here. So when I go here, the same way that we saw with our crossboard automation recipe, we're just going to go ahead and plug and play and fill in the relevant field. So in this case, when phase 1 changes to working on it, it's going to start my time tracking column. And when it changes to pause time tracking, it's going to pause my time tracking column. So in doing so, this is creating that particular time tracking workflow. I'm not going to add it because we already had it, but I wanted to show you guys how you can create it. Now, the second set of recipes that I wanted to talk about really hones into what I was discussing on the prior board. And that is, a lot of times you may be using very simplistic recipes, but when used in combination, it's going to fully automate your workflow. So I saw a couple people saying like, oh, when you change that status to done, how did it change both the people column, the corresponding dependent status, and the corresponding dependent date? And it was actually 3 separate recipes that did so. So the first recipe here we can see is that when my phase 1 design status was changed to done, it assigned then the next dependent person in the chain of command as in the person column as the lead. It also went ahead, and when my phase 1 design was changed, let me just locate it here. I have so many. Here we go. When my phase 1 design was changed to done, it then went ahead and changed the phase 2 approvals to start working on it. So that's how we saw that dependent status change. And lastly, it went ahead and when it changed my status to start working on it for my phase 2, it went ahead and also changed my approval date to my due date. So we can see that these are more basic recipes, and if anyone, which I see some people in the chat, may not be as familiar with our basic recipes, these are more basic ones where when used in combination allow you to fully automate. Now, if anyone in the chat is like, hey, even these basic recipes are looking foreign to me, this is my first time actually going into automations, no worry. We actually had a basic automation walkthrough that happened last week. And that really dives into the basics of automations, the basic recipes, how to configure, and gives a little bit more insight there. So if you're a little bit newer, no worry, we have additional resources that I recommend checking after. Okay. So now that we went ahead And on this board, took a look at that time tracking recipe along with the combination of recipes that we use to create this dependent workflow right here. I'm now going to go ahead and jump into our last board. And this board is for recurring tasks. So this is a recurring task overview board. And we hear a lot from a lot of our users that they have a workflow with a lot of tasks that recur within a weekly, a monthly, a yearly time frame, or you maybe have a project or a client process that has the same exact tasks and the same exact date structure for each project you work on. And you just want the ability to assign the first date for that particular project or client, and then all the applicable dates assign accordingly. And we see this a lot when we're talking to project managers. Well, here is an example of how you can set that particular workflow. So if we go here, we can see here that I have a template. We can see it's a template because right here it has this little star icon. And if you ever want to set a board as a template, if we just click here, if you go to more actions, it would say add as template if it wasn't already one. On this particular board, I set up all of my tasks that recur. In this case, these tasks recur for each new creative project that we undertake. And I set up the amount of time that each task would have between each other. So for example, the logo redesign task is always going to start 2 days after the department and overall rebrand budget. And that is the same process that you see going down. It is a waterfall style in regards to how these dates are listed. Now, if I want it so that when I set the first date, it's automatically going to set the rest, I'm going to show you how you can do that with our dependency automation. As you can see here, though, I changed the first date. And as you see going down, it is editing the rest of these dates accordingly. So to do so, if you go to your automation center, if we go back here to our automations, and then if we go to our categories and we click on dependencies, here you will see a list of all of our dependency automations that we offer. Specifically, the two types that we offer are adjust and ensure. And we do get a couple questions on this, so I just want to make sure I clarify the terminology here. An adjust dependency means that whenever you change a date, the dependent item is going to change by the same amount of days. So if my first task is pushed out 3 days, my dependent task is also going to push out 3 days. Ensure just means that whenever you go ahead and set up your dates, the dependent task always has to happen over the prior task. So if you push out a task by 5 days, it's just going to push out the dependent task to be 1 day after that other task. Both were looking at that waterfall style in regards to the assigning of dates. But the one that I actually used is this guy right here, and this is the one I'm going to go into. So we can see here, again, it's that same plug and play. So if we click adjust this date, we're just choosing the relevant date column on the board. This is important if you maybe have 4 or 5 different date columns. And then we're just going to go ahead and add our dependency column. If you don't have one already, when you go to add a new column, you'll just choose dependency here from the column center. So you can't go wrong when setting up the automation. And then right from here, you'll click add to board. I already have it on the board, as you can see it right here. Now, once you go ahead and actually add it, you're going to see here that this dependency column is going to get added to your board. And when it's initially added, it's actually blank. So I will remove some so you can see what it would look like. So it would look like this. If I don't add anything here, my tasks are not going to become dependent. There's not going to be any date change. So if I change this one, the rest are not going to change. With that said, though, if I click here, I can choose which task this one is dependent on. So in this example, it's dependent on the department. This one is dependent on the logo. This one is dependent on the copyright, and so on, because we do just have that waterfall style. Now, once I go ahead and set up my dependency column, we will have that structure I showed earlier where when I change this, say my new project is going to start on July 9th, I change it to July 9th. It's then going to go ahead and change all of my applicable dates accordingly. Now, what makes this really exciting is that what you can do, like I said earlier, is you can template this board. And this board will then go to your template center, the same place where you could access any of monday.com's pre-made templates. And then when a new project starts, or you get a new client, or really any workflow you might be working on from event management to education, you can just go pull up this template, change the start date to whatever the start date is now relevant for that project, and it's going to set all your applicable dates. There's no need to manually add any dates. And then, for example, if something comes up that you did not plan for, like the coronavirus, if anything then gets pushed back or put on hold, you just need to change one of these dates, and then anything dependent on that will update as well. So we get this question a lot about how you can have a recurring dependent setup, and this is what we recommend right here. So this is the last workflow that I'm going to show, and then I'm just going to go into how you can manage your automations very briefly before we start jumping into your questions. So I'm going to go back to this creative request board that we have here, and I'm actually going to jump into our activity log. So the activity log just shows you all the board activity that you have for that particular board. Anytime a change is made, we log it right here for you. What's great is that the automations get logged here as well. So anytime you see any sort of robot icon on your activity log, that means that it was an automation that has been triggered. If you hover over the robot icon, it will show you the exact recipe that was triggered, who created it, when it was created, and you can even edit it right from here. So in this case, with this particular one, this was that crossboard recipe. So it added that link to item, that value of the Father's Day Facebook ad. It also shows you right here the exact time that this happened. If I then hover over and click on this little caret icon, I can then see who triggered the action. So it was myself. By making this particular status change, this particular automation ran, and I made that status change at 11:09 a.m. So this is really useful if you're seeing changes on the board and you just want to make sure that all of it is logged. And what's also great is this can be exported directly into Excel as well, which is really nice, just by clicking this Excel button right here. Now, the second place where you can manage your automations is if we go back into our automation center and we hover towards our account usage tab. Now, when we come here, what this does is it breaks out the action usage that you had for your current cycle. So automations always renew every 30 days. And an action is any time your particular automation is triggered and produces the desired result. So if your automation is set to move an item to a group, when it moves, that's going to set an action. So here for my plan, I can see I have 25,000 actions available per month. I've used 3,100 actions, and it's also going to tell me based off the automations I have set up in my entire account, how many I'm projected to use this month. So I'm only projected to use 4,500 out of the full 25,000 I have available. So I definitely need to automate my process more. Now, along with that, it also breaks down which boards are using the highest number of automations and which creators, so which users in your account are producing the most actions that you have based off the automations created. So as the automation lover myself, I am sitting here at the top where my automations have created 956 actions. And then we can see these two boards are currently leading at 677 actions each for this current month. If you want to know for your particular plan or subscription how many automation actions that you get for the month, we do offer that on the pricing page, and also within our support articles, you can see how many actions you get based off of your subscription type. So that's what I have in regards to managing automations. Now, the only thing left that I have to discuss is going to be in regards to creating custom recipes. So I know I gave a little bit of a sneak peek in regards to that. We'll be discussing this at the end, and this is something I am extremely excited about. We have custom recipes that are currently in beta, and we are continuously building them out. So right now they are very basic, but they will be more advanced with time. So what is a custom recipe and what is the value of a custom recipe? Well, a custom recipe is going to allow you to build from scratch using building blocks, your own recipes that are completely custom to your particular workflow. And it's going to allow you to build out complex recipes. So unlike in my case today, where I may have needed to use 3 status change automations to produce what I needed for my workflow, you can have those 3 different automations combined into one recipe. So it's really exciting. Now, right now, again, it is basic. With our roadmap, we do plan to continuously enhance this feature all the way through Q4 of 2020 and into Q1 of 2021. But we do have it in beta. And if you are checking it out and trying it, please give us feedback. You can actually do so right here. And this goes directly to our product team. And we are really heavily weighing this feedback. But what does this look like? So right now in the basic form, if I was to go ahead and click this when building block, I can then choose what I want my trigger to be. So in this case, I want it so that when a status changes from something to something else, I want it to then go ahead and assign a person. So right now, these are a little bit more simplistic, but again, as we continue to build out, they'll become more complex. I can then go ahead and save my recipe. And just like we showed when you were using the natively built recipes that we have within the platform, when you're working with the custom one, it's then just a plug and play. So I can say, when my status changes from new to active, I'm going to assign myself in the lead column. So this will all go right here, and then it's as simple as adding it right to your board. And you can always see a custom recipe because it's gonna have a different symbol here. And what's really nice is you can just go in and also add a description. I don't have anything too creative, so I'll just say lead assignment. And it would be right here for you. So again, this is something we're really excited about. We've gotten a lot of feedback already, and we're going to continue to build this out. But I hope you guys are as excited about this custom recipe as we are. So I'm just going to go ahead now and turn that off. So as a really quick overview, just to conclude everything that we discussed today, really what we reviewed is the combination of 3 advanced recipes. Those were your crossboard recipes, your time tracking recipes, and your dependency recipes, along with taking basic recipes and using them together to complete a more automated workflow when you're in your monday.com account. I really encourage you guys, you will get a copy of this recording within 48 to 72 hours to take a look back, see the automations. You can pause it and add them and test them within your own account as well, and see how these work for you, because regardless of what your industry is, automations are going to help the platform do what you need it to do. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to support, and also check out the basic walkthrough that we had last week, along with the recording that we will send from today's webinar. I thank you so much for joining me today. This is something I am truly passionate about and been working on with monday.com for a very long time. So I am excited to show it to others who love automations just as much as myself. But thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day, and stay safe out there.